records from the very beginning of time thousands and thousands of years of God interacting with human beings. All the way from in the beginning God created. For thousands of years God interacted again and again and again as the people of Israel would come toward God and then away from him, and then toward him and then away from him. All the way up until the book of Malachi. In the book of Malachi, the people had wandered away from God one more time. And as they had wandered, God's path for them, his desire for their living was over here, and the people had wandered way off over here, and they were asking, and I'll read it, Lord, all who do evil are good in your sight, and he delights in them. The people were off the path, and yet they were watching as those who did not do right in the eyes of God seemed to prosper. And they said, why does God delight in them? And then they asked, where is the God of justice? Where is God? God replies to them through the prophet Malachi, and he says, lo, I will send you one like the prophet Elijah before the great day of the Lord come. He will turn the hearts of parents to their children and the hearts of children to their parents, so that I will not come and strike this land with a curse. Then the book closed. 400 silent years went by until we begin this next chapter. In the days of King Herod of Judea, there was a priest named Zechariah, who belonged to the priestly order of Abijah. His wife was a descendant of Aaron, and her name was Elizabeth. Both of them were righteous in God's sight, living blamelessly according to all the commandments and regulations of the Lord. But they had no children, because Elizabeth was barren, and both were getting on in years. Once when he was serving as a priest before God, and his section was on duty, he was chosen by lot, according to the custom of the priesthood, to enter the sanctuary of the Lord and offer incense. Now at the time of the incense offering, the whole assembly of people was praying outside. And we're going to pause right there. Let us pray. Lord, there are days and weeks and sometimes years where it seems as if you have gone silent, and yet we continue on. God, will you speak to us? We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen. An old man takes a labored breath, and with fingers slowed with age, begins to lace his sandals in silence. It had been a long silence. It seems like God used to talk all the time, through the prophets and through the great champions and through miracles. And then all of a sudden, he went silent. And there was nothing. An entire year passed. And then 2. And then 10. And then an entire century went by. And then 2. And now 400 empty years have passed. All this while, we have waited. Lord, what has gone wrong? Zechariah stepped outside, and a chilled wind greeted him as he began the most important walk of his life. He pulled his tunic a little tighter around his neck. He was no stranger to waiting, and neither was his wife, Elizabeth. When they were in their 20s, they couldn't wait for God to bless them, and so that they could welcome their firstborn into the world, and into their family, and into the care of God. They couldn't wait for their first child, but they were made to wait, and to wait longer. And then they became old, and that door closed, and they never had a child. But they persisted in doing what was right, in following God's ways. The irony of the whole thing is not lost on Zechariah as he makes his way through God's great temple, built by King Herod. King Herod was one who did not follow God's ways, who did not do what was right in the eyes of God. Yes, he built this great temple for God, but his heart belonged in Rome, and his hands were covered with blood. He did not do what was right in God's eyes, and yet he was blessed with many children. 3 of them he even killed, and all the while Elizabeth's arms were empty. They persisted in doing what God was right, but the neighbors must have wondered, what did they do wrong to earn the disfavor of God? Is Zechariah alone in this? Years have gone by, listening and waiting for God to act, hoping that God will work once again, but time goes by. Have you ever wondered, God, where are you in all of this? God, I have done right my whole life, and yet I sit here and I watch this other person who has done wrong in your eyes seem to prosper while I seem to suffer. And now years have gone by, and the doors have closed, and yet I persist. Have you ever asked, what did we do wrong that God is not answering the deep desires in our life? Zechariah is probably not alone in wondering and in asking that question. So Zechariah walks on, a man now empty. Every once in a while, he will hear a bird sing, or a ray of sunlight will bring a memory, or a song will bring back a time in his life when hope was alive and all seemed well, but it's just a whisper and then it's gone. The cold, chill wind drags it away, and he remembers his obligation, his duty. He has been chosen by Lot to enter into the sanctuary of God. The sanctuary of God. This is the single place on earth, the Holy of Holies, the place where God's presence is most deeply felt, the sanctuary. And he walks towards this unexpectant. He has been chosen, and so he goes. But like an Olympian carrying the Olympic torch for games that will never happen, he carries the incense towards a room that seems as if it's empty. God has been quiet for a very long time, and Zechariah, over the course of time, and through many disappointments has been emptied of his hope. And so he goes on, unexpectant. But he continues to do what is right. But he goes towards the sanctuary of God, expecting that I'm going to fulfill my duty, and then I'm going to leave, and then I'm going to go home again. When it rolls around to be Saturday evening and you start to think about Sunday morning, what do you expect? Do you expect that the next morning you're going to come here and, we'll walk into a school gym, right? And maybe sing, maybe get lulled to sleep by some guy's sermon, maybe see some faces that we enjoy seeing, have some conversations with people that we know and love, and then go home and continue our day? Do you wake up Sunday morning with the sense that I'm just going to go to church and then I'm going to come home and watch football or go shopping or do whatever it is that you do on the rest of the day? When you wake up on Sunday morning, what do you expect? Do you expect to just come and put in your time? Or do you expect to come and meet someone here? Do you expect that the Spirit of God, who we believe exists, is going to be here working and changing our lives? Do you wake up on Sunday morning and you go, oh, it's my day to be on setup team. Oh, I have to sing that new song. Oh, I've got to preach the sermon. I've got to run the lights. I've got to set up the chairs. I've got to make the coffee. So I go because it's my duty, and I am one who fulfills my duty. But do you come and expect to meet someone here? When you open your Bibles, whether you're in a life group or doing a Bible study or your morning devotions, do you go to your life group and watch a video of a preacher that just knocks the ball out of the park and he's speaking straight to you? How did he know that about me? He probably preached this 5 years ago. How did he know that I would be here right now? But then you go home and 13 days pass and you're like, oh, I didn't do any of my workbook. And so you whip it open and you pencil in some stuff in case somebody else at the Bible study looks at your book. You don't want it to be blank, right? So then you go and you listen to the next video or hear the next thing and have another great discussion, and then you go home and there's nothing. When you open the Bible study, when you open the scriptures in the morning, what do you expect? What do you expect? I've committed that I'm going to read every morning. So for 10 minutes every morning I'm going to read this. And so after 14 days, I read 13 of the 14. Yes! Goal is met. Or is it? Because when you opened that Bible every morning, what did you expect? Do you expect to just put in your time, close it, maybe have a word that perks your day a little, and then you move into it? Or do you expect to meet someone there? Do you expect that the word that was written, though written thousands of years ago, was written with you in mind? When you pray, do you act as if you're speaking to yourself, but somehow the words seem to go out and you wonder and then you stop, say amen, and walk away? When you pray, do you expect that every single word that begins somewhere in your soul and blows through your heart and into your mind and through your mind, do you expect that every single word is listened to and is heard and is considered and is met by one who said, I know you are going to say that. I knew that before you were born. When you pray, what do you expect? Do you expect that there is one who is hearing? Zechariah was a man who, over the course of time, was drained of his hope. And though he was a good man who fulfilled his obligations, he walked towards the sanctuary of God, a man unexpected. Unexpected. Until something unexpected awaited him. In the Gospel of Luke, we read that when Zechariah entered the temple, then there appeared to him an angel of the Lord. Has this ever happened to you? I actually did this to Aaron just like yesterday. Have you ever been home alone in a dark, silent evening, and you turn and, holy smokes! What are you doing there? I didn't know that you were going to be home. Your heart jumps out of your chest and you leap out of your shoes and you're like, I was not expecting you to be there. And I'm like, I coughed. You didn't hear me cough. I just kind of announced through the silence that I was there. Surprise is a product of expectation. When you expect that you are home alone and you turn and boom, there is someone there and you jump out of your skin, it is because you did not expect someone to be there. Zechariah, making babies jump. Zechariah walked into the sanctuary of God, not expecting to find anyone there. He will go and take the coals and pour on the incense and let the incense burn, and then turn and walk away and go about his day, until an angel of the Lord appeared to him. Surprise is a product of expectation. When he walked into the sanctuary of God, what did he expect? So the angel appeared to him, and Zechariah saw him. He was terrified, and fear overwhelmed him. So I want to take and break both of these apart. We're all terrified when all of a sudden someone is standing there and we didn't expect. We're terrified, but then we quickly come back to ourselves. Zechariah was terrified because he didn't expect this, but he was also overwhelmed by fear. So he had no idea what was going on. He didn't expect this, but then he was fearful because it still didn't register what was happening. And I want to contrast this to something that happens a little bit later in Luke 2. Because an angel appears to probably a 13-year-old girl. Do you know this story? So Mary was probably in a silent place. She wasn't in the sanctuary of God. She was probably doing laundry or folding clothes in some quiet room, and an angel appeared to her. And Luke records that her reaction after the angel announced himself was that she was perplexed, and she pondered what these words mean. Surprise is a product of expectation. Mary was not surprised and terrified the way Zechariah does. She has somewhere deep inside of her a sense that God is. So what do I expect? And it's not like this is a case of, good angel, bad angel. Like Zechariah gets the big, fearsome Gabriel. But Mary gets like a little pudgy angel in a diaper playing a harp. She just wants to pinch his cheeks or something. No, same angel, different expectations. When the angel appeared to Zechariah, he was terrified and he was overwhelmed by fear. But the angel said to him, "Do not be afraid, Zechariah, for your prayer has been heard. Your wife Elizabeth will bear you a son, and you will name him John." He said, "Do not fear. Your prayer has been heard, and your wife Elizabeth will bear you a son. At this moment in time, all the disappointment and all the emptiness of all the years converged at a single point. And Zechariah replied to the angel, "How will I know that this is so? For I am old, and Elizabeth." You know, one of the things that deeply impressed me about Zechariah is, if you think about it, at this moment in his life, it's as if the universe flipped on its head and is spinning backwards for Zechariah. And yet, somewhere deep inside, he still has the wisdom and the wherewithal to not call Elizabeth old. He said, "I'm old." And Elizabeth, she's getting on in years, right? That's what he says. What a guy. But Zechariah, all the years of all the emptiness and all the disappointment converged at this single moment in time when he's like, how am I going to know that this is true? We have been through so much. There have been so many disappointments. I cannot go home and get Elizabeth's hope up one more time. How will I know that this is so? It's been so long. The crib is covered in dust, and that door has been closed. We have so long lived unexpectant. And the angel replied to Zechariah, "I am Gabriel. I stand in the presence of God, and I have been sent to speak to you and to bring you this good news." In other words, the angel Gabriel is saying, no matter what it may have looked like, or for how long, God is and is at work. Listen very slowly. No matter how long it has been, or what it may have looked like, God is and is at work. All of a sudden, waiting has for so long for them felt like this empty space, this negative time, where we're just waiting and there's nothing good that is coming of it. Waiting is just emptiness. Waiting is time, but it's negative time. But when we hear this, somewhere deep inside, when we remember that God is and that God is at work, something deep inside begins to shift a little and move and maybe even kick. When we remember that God is and is working on his own schedule. God has been there since the beginning of time, and in his mind and in his great upper story, which no one can see but his, things are moving exactly at the right pace. God is and is at work. And when we remember this, all of a sudden waiting seems a lot less like empty time and negative space, and a whole lot more like preparation. After those days, his wife Elizabeth conceived, and for 5 months she remained in seclusion. She said, "This is what the Lord has done for me." Elizabeth, who was skilled in the art of waiting, was made to wait expectantly 9 more months while God prepared what he had been working on all along. Zechariah and Elizabeth had desired Zechariah Jr. in their 20s, but they received John in their 60s. What the world needed was John. 400 years ago, God said, I will send another one like Elijah, who will be sent to prepare the way of the Lord. What the world needed was John. God is and is at work. So for you and I as well, the word is live expectantly. Let us pray. Lord, we so often, when we are made to wait, forget that you have a grand upper story that is happening, and we can't see it. So we wonder where you are. We wonder why we must wait, and if we have passed our days. But God, you are always working, and you are always close, and everything happens in our life exactly on time. God, you are, and you are at work. Help us to live expectantly. And we pray this in Jesus' name.
I don't know what you're waiting for today, but I know this. God knows. So if you're tired of waiting, if you have given up hope, if you feel like God has forgotten you, this is the story of Advent. While we wait, we prepare room. And then one day we'll see what God was doing. He is, and He is at work. This last song has a line in it that says, His plans are still to prosper. He has not forgotten us. If you feel like God has forgotten you, may I remind you today of Jeremiah 29:11, where this song comes from. Jeremiah was a prophet who wrote to people in exile. They were hurting, they were waiting, they wanted God to speak. And he said, someday, I'm going to take you out of exile. My plan is to prosper you. Please stand. This song is full of scripture promises, from Psalm 23, that God walks with us in the valley, from Genesis 50, that He takes all the people and works it for good. Would you dare to pray this week as we move towards Advent, towards the birth of Jesus? Would you dare to pray expectantly this week? Because God is, and He is at work. Amen.
There is strength within the sorrow. There's beauty in our tears. you